Welcome to the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now, your host, Josh Grund.
What is going on, guys? It is Josh here with Buckeye Bowhunter, and we are back for another episode of the Rut to Roost Podcast. I'm joined here by Bryce. Today, we are missing John. We're going to fix that, though. Don't worry. Me and John are going to do our kind of own podcast tomorrow after this podcast, so I'm not sure when those will actually drop, but if you love listening to John, don't worry about it. You'll get your fill of him. But so me and Bryce here, we're going to talk a little bit about deer hunting. Deer season's coming up. I've done a little deer hunting already. Yeah, pretty excited. But we're going to try to keep these podcasts coming as consistently as possible. We're not going to lock down once a week or twice a week or anything like that at this point, just because we are so busy. Just look to know that we're going to try to do these as frequently as we possibly can, if that makes sense.
It's tough, man, with work, and now we actually have hunting in the way. Time gets slimmer, so.
Yeah, it's harder to do things during hunting season, right?
It's so hard.
Every year I feel like hunting season comes around, and I just literally put everything important on the back burner, and I'm like, I'll get to it in January.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
I'm so with you.
Which is probably not a good way to live, but
if you think about it, all the things we've been talking about this since we started this in the spring is there's so many little things you have to do and think about when you're deer hunting, and the time it takes to do all those. There's just not much time for much else if you're really devoted, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like it's a year-round thing, that's for sure. I know I'm going to definitely struggle this year with work and finding time to deer hunt. Thank God I'm lucky enough to be able to take off vacation and stuff and use some time, so I will have that. But otherwise, I'm probably going to be a weekend warrior until my vacation starts.
Right. I'm with you. Same way. I'll probably be a weekend warrior for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you can still kill big bucks doing it that way. You know, being smart. And honestly, there's a lot to say about, I think a lot of the mistakes that I made when I was younger revolved around just entirely hunting too much.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah. I'm hunting up here at home, at least. I'm hunting properties that are 80, 150, 160 acres max. So, just think about it. So I'm changing up my mentality, Bryce. Let me talk to you about this. So,
yeah,
my back 40 property I hunt. Right. There's a bunch of decent bucks I got on camera all summer. They're all kind of hard-horned right now, which is pretty cool. But every year around end of October, I start to see bigger deer show up. There's not any shooters that I would want to shoot hanging out there right now, but it's kind of the same thing every year. That property just doesn't hold mature deer during the summer. And then once the leaves start falling and the rut starts kind of kicking in or whatever, big bucks tend to move in because it's a giant clear cut. It's so thick and gnarly that it's still really good cover even into the fall. Where I think in the summertime, I don't know, bucks aren't really looking for that type of cover, that hard stem count, like briars and green briars and that kind of stuff, because, they got soft velvet antlers. I think it just messes with their antlers walking through that crap. But anyways, so this year, years in the past, there's a river. Well, just to kind of explain the property, there's a river that kind of encompasses the whole property. And the only way to access across the river, there's this little bridge. And I think, if you watch the YouTube channel, you've probably seen me cross that bridge 100 times. But my plan this year is to try not to cross that bridge and kill a deer from this side of the river, if that makes sense.
Gotcha, yeah.
So there's a big trail that kind of runs parallel to that river. And there's a really good tree I think I can get in. And I just wonder, like, how much more daylight activity I will see if I just completely stay out of there until, November 5th or November 3rd or something like that. And can I kill a deer on that trail going along the river without ever stepping foot in there? You know what I mean? But kind of an experiment I'm going to try to do.
So when was the earliest you used to go in there?
Oh, I would go in there like
September 30th.
Opening morning, yeah. I would love hunting in there because I know it's a bedding area, and I would always have, decent bucks on camera. And, every year you'll get a picture or two of a big deer kind of maybe on an excursion or something coming through, and, he might be back at some point. But to be honest, that property's always kind of been like, if I'm not seeing anything on my good properties, I'll go here.
Okay.
So it's kind of been like I want to go hunting. I don't really have a good place to go. I'm just going to go burn a sit here and at least I'm hunting. You know what I mean? But the last few years, that's where I've killed both my bucks.
Really?
So it's becoming like kind of my favorite property, if that makes sense. So I kind of want to go at it a little different because it is such a thick, gnarly, big bedding area. We're talking a 20-acre clear cut, which there's not a lot of those around me, and it's pretty residential.
Definitely
you got
not.
a highway on one side. You got a lot of houses and neighborhoods and farms on the other side. There's a giant wetland to the east that is literally untouched. It's kind of, you can't really walk through it. It's mostly flooded.
Mm-hmm.
And then that river kind of meanders through there and kind of encompasses the whole thing. So if you stay out of there, there's really nobody else going over there.
Right.
And I think
hard access.
That's been my problem with that property lately and that's what I was getting at is, these small properties, you walk in there once, twice, 3 times, early October. Think about how many times a buck has crossed your access path. Because there's no really good way to access that without going straight up through the heart of the clear cut.
There's just one access, huh?
Yep, exactly.
So hear me out. Why don't you maybe this year try something to where, say you stay out of it all September or most, well, I guess it would be all September, but most of October, and you just slowly hunt from the outskirts in. So if you don't want to even go to the bridge, you start as far
Well, the
far
bridge
out
is
as you
like
can.
literally like 200 yards from where I park.
Oh shoot.
Yeah. So,
That's
but
tough.
I think that's what I'm saying. There's a trail that runs along the inside of that creek, on the other side of the creek from where I park.
Yeah.
And there's a big, nice, gnarly tree on this side of the creek. That creek's about, 15 yards across. It's a pretty
Right.
wide, deep creek. And there's some good creek crossings there too, but they're just like I said, the access is just terrible. The whole place is so overgrown and gnarly. It's not my property, so I'm not going in there and brush hogging paths and stuff. It's too late to do that this year anyways. And
Right.
the the minimal amount of encroachment I think I could possibly do is walk down this tractor path. And before I cross that bridge, to the left, like 20 yards, there's a big old gnarly maple tree. And I think I might be able to get a crack one morning at one of them good bucks walking the inside trail of that creek. And so I'll still be able to hunt it, but like I said, this is like a 20-acre clear cut, and a lot of times I'll go clear to the back and turn around and hunt, and
Right.
I get way in there. Where I killed my buck this year, I was 300 yards into that clear cut, and I think just staying out of that completely, leaving that side of the river completely alone. I got a bunch of cameras up in there. I'm really excited to see how the daylight activity, if more deer are, if they feel like that's a sanctuary to them, maybe I'm going to get a lot more daylight pictures. And then when, November 1st does pop in and I decide today's the day to go in, I got a north wind, have a lot better opportunity maybe.
There you go. I like that. Now, sitting in that maple tree, that trail that you're seeing, do you think they're going to food from that trail, or
that
do you
trail, I
know
think,
of any oaks around or anything?
yeah. So that trail, I think, is like, it could be a couple things. So it's weird. There's not any like destination food sources around there.
Okay.
Like I said, there's a highway. There's some farms like across the road, but they're like cattle farms.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no like real standing crops. And then there's a big new neighborhood. And then there's like a bunch of just houses, along the road that I park on. So it's like mostly woods. Part of it is owned by like a fracking company or whatever. I don't know, Dominion or something. Owns a pretty big chunk to the east of where I hunt. But, I think a lot of those deer, if they're going to a destination food source, they're traveling pretty far at night.
Right.
But what I think happens is, everybody hunts around me, especially early season. And by the time October or November rolls around, those deer get pushed into that real thick stuff, right? From pressure and because it's like the right type of cover for them that time of year too. But I think just my activity in there forces them to be really nocturnal. Because I still get a ton of buck pictures all night long. Like last year, I had more big bucks on camera on that farm. It'd blow your mind, dude. I mean, it was crazy, but 98% of them were 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Yep.
But
you get one hot doe in there when they're all packed in like that.
Yeah.
That's the only place they feel comfortable to start chasing hot does, right? Because it's so much cover.
And that's what I'm wondering too. I think those does deal with pressure and deal with me walking in there a lot more. So you will get does that are like residents there, staying there, and they're dealing with me walking in there, and they're not going to pack up and move as easily. But a mature buck, he's out. If he wanted to bed there all deer season, I don't think he's going to if I'm in there. Where I think staying out there, that gives that big mature buck a chance to get comfortable and live there. You know what I mean?
Maybe
that's why I'm getting those night
breed
pictures.
one before you even get in there.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know what I mean? That's why I think I'm getting those night pictures, is because those big bucks during the rut, they know all those does are there, and they want to be there, but they're not going to risk going there in the middle of the day because my ass is in there twice a week or something like that. You know what I mean? And his property isn't big enough. So that's a big mentality shift that I'm kind of going to try for at least this property. Like, I like to hunt a lot, guys. So, we'll see how that really works out.
I think it's a good idea. One thing I noticed last year, towards the end of gun season, it was the extended weekend, and we killed a couple does, and they were in that real thick stuff. Those briar bushes and that real thick stuff is one of the things that still holds greeny, leafy food after all the leaves drop. You know what I mean? So
yep.
For a buck cruising, it doesn't get much better than thick cover and something to munch on the way.
Yep. Multiflora rows. Like how many, those areas like when there's snow on the ground and like you just see a whole hillside of green still.
Right.
Like that's where they want to be.
For sure.
Like for sure. That's food. That's green food,
It's easy as they walk through,
Yeah.
Cruising.
And this is loaded with that stuff.
Perfect.
But I will say this clear cut, they have like a time limit of when they're good, and then when they start to just like kind of get to the point where it's not really food anymore, it's more just cover.
Yeah.
And I think this clear cut is kind of on that precipice. I started hunting here maybe 5 years ago, and at that point it was 2 years old.
Okay.
And it was like you walked in there, it was select cut. I'm sorry, it's not a clear cut. I keep saying clear cut, but it was actually select cut. But you walk in there and there's a couple really big trees every once in a while, but when I first started hunting there, it was just like low to the ground, thick, gnarly stuff the deer could bed in. But if a deer stood up, you could see his rack across the whole thing.
Wow.
From 200 yards away. But now, like, it's just just so thick, dude.
I believe it.
Saplings, like 2-3 inches thick and just packed in there. And there's a lot of woody browse for the winter time, and there will be a lot of deer in there in the winter. But like that high quality like time period that a clear cut has to really attract deer, like a destination food source. I think this is kind of past that point, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I think that's a good idea though. I'm leaning towards doing the same type of approach at kind of the honey hole right by the little bit of private where camp is down in this public area. I'm gonna sit back. I'm gonna scout other places. If people want to go in, I'm gonna watch people. It's really what I'm gonna do for a little bit too. I'm gonna watch where the pressure's at, and just keep my ear open. I mean, it's a deer camp. You know, you hear a lot from neighbors, and they're open to tell you where they're at. And whatnot.
Oh yeah.
And when time hits is when I'm gonna go where nobody's been.
Now, are you? So that's a really good point, and we'll talk about this when we talk about my Kentucky hunting experience. But like, especially hunting on public land, but hunting on private land too. You know, hunting such small properties, knowing that every neighbor and their brother, there's somebody hunting on every parcel in Ohio. Ohio's tough like that.
Right.
Kind of learning where the pressure is and kind of hunting the hunters.
Literally.
Right? And knowing where they're going and where they like to walk and where they like to sit. Pretty much that's going to tell you where the deer aren't.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you'll know how to game plan moving forward after that. But
I learned it the hard way last year.
yeah, do you got cameras up or anything right now?
This is the first time since I've gotten into the bow hunting, really. I'm not even running a camera. I'm going to try just go with the sign. Because really, the cameras for me were just a check at the end of the year. What do I got?
Which is a really good way to look at it. But Bryce, I'm very proud of you. That's good. I wish I could do that. I'm addicted to cameras.
It's the only way for me to learn the public land the hard way.
That's the best way. Like, that's all you hear about now is like our trail cameras making us like worse woodsmen. The answer is absolutely.
Yes, and that's not how I want to be. I'm trying to take as much out of those big wild woods as I can.
Yep. And I'll be honest, since I started like heavily implementing cell cameras as a part of my game, I have been in the woods less than any other time in my life.
Yep.
At least when you have like old school cameras out there that you got to go walk out and check. You're walking to the camera, you're seeing sign, you're scouting on the way, you're scouting on the way out, taking a different route or something. I set those cameras up and that's it.
Yep.
You know, like why go in there? Why spook anything? Why bump anything? You know, but
right.
It's different. Not to keep rambling on about it, but like in a public land setting, I think it's a very good choice. You know, don't hold yourself to such a high standard. You know, shoot whatever. You know, little Bascarac 8 walks in, smoke him, you know. And don't go in there with, like, a picture of a 170-inch deer and hold out for that and be looking for that, you know. Kind of. And that was what was fun about hunting Kentucky, too. We'll talk about that maybe. But, like, I had no clue what was out there. And it's a different kind of fun.
It is. It is, especially I had a good experience with that last year. No cameras in this area. Tried a new spot. It was kind of like a funnel, big rub right in the middle where these two fingers meet. Kind of a high point. Oh my God, there's a nice trail. It was a good spot. You just hear something running down the hill. You can't even see it yet. You don't know. It could be a freaking 150-inch
world-class
buck that nobody even knows about.
Even knows. Yep.
Chasing a doe. It was a spike. But that type of rush, I think, is different.
They're two different things for sure. Because, like, it's a different kind of excitement. Like, I enjoyed hunting in Kentucky without any intel and just walking through the woods, reading the sign, you know, making decisions based on what I'm actually looking at, as opposed to it's a different kind of excitement when you know you have a shooter buck living on a property and you have pictures of him.
Right.
And you get out in that stand and you know, like, this is a good, you know,
everything's aligned.
Day. This is a good wind. This is we got a cold front coming through. Right. I know that buck was in here 2 nights ago. Like, let's go. Like, that's a different type of excitement. You know what I mean?
I believe it, yeah.
But I do agree. I think, you know, as a new bow hunter, I think it's a great thing to just, you don't need trail cameras. Just when you get to a point maybe one day where you're like, okay, I've killed a bunch of deer, I've killed several bucks, now I want to like hunt a specific deer, right? Or something like that. Then maybe jump into that, but don't put that pressure on yourself.
No.
I
noticed it the first time I first started bow hunting. I put a couple SD card cameras out. I was just going to check them at the end of the year, but even that first time, or one of them I checked twice, whatever. Them couple times going in, you're walking right past a sign. I wasn't even trying to identify different oaks or nothing. You know what I mean? I didn't know the difference. Walking past all of it, I'm not learning what was important.
Yep. I know guys, man, who, and nothing against this, everybody, but Ohio's a huge baiting state. I know a lot of guys that go put their corn out, put their camera up, hang their stand right there, and then they don't walk in the woods until they got a picture of a buck daylighting eating their camera or eating their corn. And to me, like anybody, like do whatever you want, guys. Like, it's hunting. I got no issues with it whatsoever.
We're just glad you're hunting.
Yeah, but for me and like what I'm looking to get out of deer hunting, that's not it. Like,
same.
I want to feel like I'm like a woodsman and I'm hunting him down.
The all natural way, like kind of that
like
natural instinct.
I don't know, but yeah, that's cool. I think that's a good idea. Sit back and, that'll give you a chance too, Bryce, to, say you do have a weekend to go hunt and you get down there and you're like, man, it's like 70 degrees. It's like not a very good wind for that good spot I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Take that as an opportunity to go hunt somewhere you never hunted before. Just go blow an area out and learn something.
I'm excited. I was down there a couple weekends ago just catfishing the river, and I was looking across, and there's like a bowl that's formed by these big hills, like a holler, and I'm looking at the trees, and I'm like, man, that just from a distance, you know how the oak trees look real bushy up on the top of a hill? Just looking over there, looking at different treetops, I found these couple, it looks like two nice oaks next to each other or more. I was like, I'm going to go try that one. I'm just going to go check it out. When season comes in, maybe even hunt it, maybe take the stand, and just go scout it. Like,
yep, that's a good idea, man.
Simple look like that.
Yep. I think that's something I'm going to try to do this year too, is like, if I go into a spot with a stand on my back, and that's where I do most of my scouting. I kind of stay out of my properties all summer. I kind of stay out of them. Mid-season, I'm not trying to like go do like scouting rounds in the middle of October. I know everybody's different, but my mentality is when I go into a property or I go into a specific area on that property, it's because I of intel I have from the previous years, and I'm scouting my way in, and this looks good, I'm gonna hang and hunt right here. You know what I mean? Like I tell guys this all the time. The 160 acre farm, the Frank farm that I hunt, I don't think I have hang and hunted in the same tree, like ever.
That's
like
awesome.
There are certain trees that I'll hunt out of every year, but like in a year to year, like in a single season, I'm really not hunting the same stands, like the same trees. I'm even if it's only 20, 50, 60 yards, I'm moving the next time I come in there or something. Like I don't know. I have this thing about like, I already hunted there. It's like contaminated. He's on to me.
Yep.
I need to do something different, So I try to bounce around as much as possible. And
that's such a key component to being successful, I feel like, because a deer could sneak past you at 30 yards. You never know. If he's got the right cover, that 30 to 50 yard difference could be major.
Trust me, I'm aware of how
sneaky they are. We make this joke at our deer camp every year on gun season that by like day 3 or 4, they burrow in the ground.
Oh yeah, man.
We'll have a couple rough days, and
they got tunnels. I've said that for
they're
years.
burrowed up.
They got tunnels underground.
Yeah.
It's like, where are they?
Literally.
Where do they go? You know,
crawling on all fours.
I would love to have some kind of, I don't know, radio collar thing, like study in like our area in northeastern Ohio on a buck, like put it on a 3 or 4 year old deer and just see what he actually does with all the roads and the neighborhoods and all that kind of stuff, and how he goes about his life. Because a lot of those studies are, you know, on some like unpressured Texas ranch where he's got 2,500 acres to roam, or
right,
you know, some big WMA or something like that. So I don't see a lot of studies about deer. Like,
he might just be making that big circle slower than he ever has. You know, they always like to circle back. He might just keep doing this big loop.
You know, I think a lot of deer, a lot of big bucks, around here, I don't think they move as far as you think they do.
I kind of agree with that.
I really don't. I know everyone's always like, oh, you could be 5 miles away. It's like, I don't think so. Like, every property I have, and I'm sure you can think of it too, I'm talking, like I said, 40 to 160 acres. Every single one of them properties have some area or some spot that I've literally never gone to, because it's just a pain in the ass. It's too hard to walk through. It's too thick.
Deer there.
You got to get through a swamp to get to it or something. I guarantee you that's where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but
I think they tend to travel more when you get to more humanly populated areas where you have more buildings, you have more infrastructure.
It could be.
Then maybe they're traveling them thin lines of woods or.
Well, I think
fields.
you see those 3-year-olds doing that.
Yeah.
So like those 3-year-old bucks, because there's not a lot of places where I hunt where it's got everything. You know, there's not a lot of places where there's water, there's food sources for like summer, fall, and winter.
Right.
There's the right cover the whole time. But there are some places like that, right? And those are the places where consistently year after year you see those 4, 5, 6-year-old mature bucks living. And I think when they get that age and they take over one of those areas, like they just don't move unless they get continuously harassed and bumped out of those places. But I think a lot of these deer are so used to it. Farmers, 4-wheelers,
right,
dirt bike riders. Half the farms I hunt, you know, the farmer or the neighbors go ride in their side-by-sides every evening and kick all the deer out of the fields, you know, like they're so used to that stuff. I don't think they're really hard, I think, in my opinion, to kick out of where they want to be.
Right.
But those 3-year-olds and younger, I think those are the bucks you see cruising and traveling and moving around a lot, and kind of because they don't really have a home, you know, and they have to have a bigger core area that encompasses everything that they need, right?
Without getting ran off.
Yeah, where that big mature buck, he's gonna get that, you know, 15-acre little parcel that's got everything he could ever want,
right?
You know, and come try and take it from me.
I've kind of noticed that the difference between hunting around a home, where smaller patches of woods, more human, more farmers, everything you just said, compared to down when you really get back into some of them big wooded hill plots, of how much more skittish those deer are down there. Like, I've had deer last year, like, they seen me moving. It was about dark. Like, I'm trying to leave. There were a couple of small does or something back here at home. They kind of just moped around, didn't really run off. If I was down south, they're gone. Hightailing.
Yeah, man. I mean, how far, if you bump a big buck,
yeah,
like, how far do you think he's gonna? You think he's gonna like take off and run across a road to get to it? Like,
right.
Like, how far do you think he's really going? Like, you've been hunting,
couple hundred yards.
They just disappear, man. Like,
yeah,
they get 100 yards and they're gone. Like, you don't know where they went.
Nope.
So like,
one little finger, one little hump, and
yeah, I mean, they're like rabbits, dude. They get into some little brush pile and they disappear.
Literally.
You know. But yep. Yeah, so that's cool, man. Like, are you excited to kind of have another go at your property up here?
I am excited. I was scoping in a couple smaller bucks out in the bean field 2 nights ago.
Oh yeah.
With the binos. But probably a whole month ago or more, when them beans finally kind of got full growth, I seen 3 bachelor bucks up way back in the back.
Really?
And 2 of them looked damn near about identical, and they were big.
Really?
They were big.
There you go.
So I'm excited. I had a couple chances at some big ones last year and didn't get it done. So
what'd you do last year, and what are you going to do different to up your
last
odds?
year I think I played the wind pretty well. I never actually got like sniffed out or snorted out of there. But I do recall one hunt last year, early season. I went back to the corner where, for y'all who don't know, the back corner of this property is like the really only wooded part I can hunt. The rest is crop fields. There's one little point that comes out, but it's been really logged out. But walking back to that corner woods, I kicked up a doe, and I would assume her yearling. They were like sitting right on the edge of that cornfield right before you get into that back corner of woods. So my goal this year, because right away that's already, boom, you spooked the woods up just like that. You're not even in the woods yet, and they just ran through there hightailing. But the goal this year is kind of what you said with your creek and bridge situation. I want to start at the edges. I know some spots where they bed on another property, but they come over to the bean field that's not by those woods. So I'm gonna try and stay on the outskirts, try and go on the edge of these fields first before I really get into the woods.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's not the best property, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. I've seen your aerial photos, and it's difficult.
It's tough, but it holds deer. It's thick back there.
I think that's the best play, though. So there's 2 camps of people, right? When it comes to whitetail hunting, it's like, do you be aggressive or do you like sit back, right? And if you watch YouTube and you watch, I don't want to name drop anybody, but you watch a lot of these like famous YouTube shows or famous YouTube hunters. All they do is promote like be as aggressive as possible, right?
Yeah.
Dan Infalt says if you're just playing it safe and you're taking your time hunting the outskirts and working your way in for like by the rut or something like that, then all you're doing is showing your cards to that deer and you're just letting him know that he's being hunted, right? Because he's going to smell you, or he's going to catch your trail after dark, after you left or something like that. And he's going to be, the first time you're in there, he's going to know, oh, this guy, somebody's in here, somebody's been in here or whatever, know something's up. But there's that second camp, like a lot of really big time deer hunters too. I can't think of any names, but like, I mean, the Drurys and the Lukowskis, they're a play it safe. Like, let's not go crashing into the bedding area opening day and try to kill a deer coming back to bed or something like that. And I think it really depends on your situation where you're hunting, right? So I think,
right. And what you're doing, like in your situation, kind of circle back with the camera thing.
Yeah, true.
You don't know he's coming out in the evening.
True.
It's a gamble.
So yeah, if you don't have like a lock on it, like there's no reason to go just like diving into a bedding area opening morning.
I agree.
Like if you don't know where he's like coming in, where his bed is or whatever.
Right.
But I think in your situation and in a lot of my situations where I hunt, playing it safe is the way to go, because like what, you got one property up here to
That's
hunt?
it. Well, 2.
What do you think is going to happen if you go in there? Because when you're being aggressive, those guys, they're playing the odds. They're playing like, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to blow this area out, I'm going to ruin it
I
if
got
I don't
one
kill a
chance.
buck. Yep, but I got 40 other places on public land to go blow and ruin. And,
right.
On spot 30, I might be right and I might connect.
It's pretty good odds. I mean, really,
Yeah,
you
if
got
that's
40
all you
good
got to
ones.
hunt and you got enough public land to do that, for sure. But if you're hunting private land like we're hunting up here, like I think that's a terrible way to go about it.
I agree.
Like let's let's just, like, you still want to hunt. Make sure your access is good.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure your wind is good when you go in. But, like, be smart about it and try to make that deer still feel, like, safe as much as possible throughout the season. He may get on you. He may know he's being hunted or whatever, but you haven't dove into his bedding area. So he still feels safe there.
That's his home still.
Exactly. But you go in there and he catches you and wins you in a tree stand over top of his bed or something like that, he's gone. Good
And that's
luck.
where other hunters, that could come to your benefit. You're that neighbor on the next property or two over that he might hang around at. They go in there blowing it out. Boom, your property is a sanctuary now for him.
Because I think, if you're hunting private land and you don't have an unlimited amount of spots, or you don't have 25 hit list bucks on different properties on ready to go, like, playing it smart's the best way to play it.
I agree.
So, anyways, I mean, we can switch gears. You want to talk about my
this
trip?
is bringing me all full circle to what I have been avoiding asking you on the phone about Kentucky.
I was
like
wondering.
even bringing
so
I've
been home for a week and a half, and I've talked to Bryce half a dozen times, and not once he's been like, "How's your Kentucky trip?" And I'm not one to just like throw it in someone's face. So
I just kept it real short.
I'm like, man, he hasn't asked me about it yet. What's going on here?
I'm very curious, and I wanted to talk about this on the mic for sure, on the record, but I'm very curious to just hear your entire story of kind of what you did start to finish when it came to going into something you had no intel on, because that's the bane of my existence in public hunting. So I want to see what knowledge I can get from you, really, of where you started, how you started.
Well, let me just start with this. If you are interested, so my new series this year is called Whitetailer. It debuted on the Buckeye Bowhunter YouTube channel like 3 days ago, so probably like 6 days ago if you're listening to this right now. If you are interested in watching that and not knowing how it ends, spoiler alert, do not listen to the next 15 minutes of this podcast. But
shoot,
if you don't watch the show or whatever, then just buckle up. I don't know how much you're going to learn from my experience, because I don't know how much. I mean, I think I learned a whole lot. I think I learned a lot. I got a lot of like hindsight's 2020 things, and I wish I would have done things a little different, but
that's part of the experience.
Yeah, right. I'll be honest, I'm very new to I used to hunt public land when I was younger. But I'm very new to like the out of state thing, traveling to hunt, going to a place I have very little knowledge of. So kind of to start from the beginning, in the spring, I turkey hunted. It was in Kentucky.
That's right.
My buddy from work, awesome guy. His family's amazing. They let me stay and turn their house into a hunting cabin pretty much the whole time I'm down there. So kudos to them. I really appreciate it, because otherwise it would have been, camping or an expensive hotel or something like that.
Living out of the truck.
Yeah, it was pretty nice having a bed to sleep in and a place to charge all my camera batteries and everything every night. So thank you so much to them. But I hunted this specific WMA in Kentucky for turkey season. And the one thing I wish I would have done is kind of paid more attention when I was turkey hunting to deer hunting stuff. But, I get so into the turkey hunting stuff, like that stuff just...
I remember you saying, though, like, I kicked up some bucks here, and I kicked up deer. You said you seen a lot of deer down there.
I did. I saw... there were a couple different locations where I saw, some bachelor bucks in the spring. I saw some does. So I kind of had a little bit of knowledge of, I knew the lay of the land pretty well.
That's key, yeah.
The topography or whatever. I knew where I had seen deer in the spring, but this is late summer, so, who knows where they're at. But I got down there a little late. I left Friday. So Kentucky season opened last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago, September 2nd.
2, yeah.
And I drove down that Friday afternoon. my plan was to get down there because there's some private crop fields that butt up to a large part of this WMA, wildlife management area. And I wanted to see if there were beans and stuff, and maybe, post up on the road or something with some binoculars and see if I could see any bucks out in the field feeding or something.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting down there, and it was like getting dark kind of when I rolled into the WMA. I was able to kind of confirm that there were soybeans planted in this field, which was pretty awesome. And then that was about it. Then it got dark. So I drove back to,
It's tough.
my buddy's house and kind of was going over, maps and Onyx and everything, kind of put together this plan. So I had
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the mapping and Onyx, were you going off topography on maybe where to sit around them beans, or were you going off other things too, like the environment around there, like water or...
Yeah, so the main thing I looked at, especially, so when I was here, I really focused on like looking at creek bottoms. And the cool part about, there were 2 different locations where I was really, and that's another thing, I kind of wish I would have had more places picked out. But there were 2 different locations where there were bean fields that butted up to the WMA, where there's like forest, and it was like really close or adjacent to like a big creek bottom, like thick stuff. And I remember turkey hunting how thick and like overgrown these creek bottoms were. So in my thought process was like, I guarantee you there's deer bedded in these creek bottoms. I guarantee you there's really good crossings on this creek somewhere. So if I can find a trail coming to and from this bean field on this creek bottom, because the woods is super open.
Yeah, I believe it.
A lot of it is. And there's just trails everywhere, deer trails everywhere. So it's like you don't even know where to sit. So finding a place that kind of concentrates that movement, in my mind, was finding a creek crossing.
Water source.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
So that was kind of my plan. And in the back of my head, I knew from turkey hunting, there's this big beaver dam, like way back in the woods, that was like, had been there for years. Like it's like growing grass. It's like a land bridge pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had that in mind, and I'm like, I remember there were deer tracks on that beaver dam and everything, and that was my plan for opening morning. So
I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and it's way
Shoot.
back. It's probably 400, maybe a little over a quarter mile from the bean field. But I'm getting in there in the morning. I didn't expect to see, I wanted to get kind of far off the bean field, expecting deer movement to kind of come through there like 9:30, 10 o'clock. That way, walking in blind with a stand on my back in the dark, I could find that beaver dam, pick a tree, get set up like in that gray light time period, and not expect deer to be funneling through right at that moment. You know what I mean? And that all kind of worked out, which you'll hear. But the thing, though, dude, Kentucky, oh my God. The insects, the spiders.
Oh, trying to walk and there's webs everywhere?
Oh,
that's horrible.
My God, dude. It was out of control. I'm not a fan of spiders. Like, they don't freak me out. Like, I'm not like an arachnophobe or anything, and bugs in general don't bother me very much, but I'm not kidding, dude. It was like walking to that stand in the dark in the morning. First off, I messed up. I didn't bring a light. I had one, but I didn't charge it. So I got this dead light, and so I'm walking all the way, I took like a 1.5 mile loop to get back to this dam. And I'm just using my cell phone light. So you can't see crap with that cell phone light. So every single spider web is just like, boom, in your face, and you're just covered in them. And at one point, so like, I had just missed this giant spider, and these are like big orb weavers or something, like gnarly looking things. And I just missed this one, and it's dark. I'm like, oh God, like, thank God I didn't run into that one. And I turn, And boom, I just feel this thing like hit me on the face and like drop. Well, there was like another web. And I'm like, oh crap. So I hit this web and I take my phone light and I go like this, kind of turn the phone light at my body. And I look at my body to see if there's a spider on me or whatever. And like I'm looking and the light hits the spider and creates like this big shadow on the trees next to me. And I just see like this 20-foot tall like legs like moving in the trees. And I was just like, oh God. Like, it was a nightmare, dude. Like I flicked this thing off of me and it's like a mess.
You're screaming in the middle.
I was trying not to. I was trying to be really quiet. I'm like screaming in like silence, you know. But like it was just,
oh, that's horrible.
Because half the walk is through this like really overgrown field. And they had not mowed it. Like in turkey season, it was a nice like tractor path.
Oh,
but
I
it
gotcha.
was so overgrown. Like I'm talking like brush and weeds like up to my face. So like,
holy cow!
And I'm just walking a deer trail pretty much all the way to the back. So it's like every 10 steps there's like a spider. And so I ended up getting a stick and I'm like walking.
Yeah, doing the wand.
The stick in front of me, trying to knock them all off. And so I get to the woods and I'm like looking at Onyx and trying to figure out the best route to get there. It's pitch black, cell phone light. Stupid. So stupid.
Thank God for Onyx.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, thank God. So, finally, I make my way through all this stuff. Covered in spiders, covered in spider webs. I find the beaver dam, and the beaver dam, and it's still dark. Beaver dam is loaded with deer tracks. And I'm like, boom, this is the spot. I'm going to sit here this morning.
Sweet.
I wanted to do a ton of scouting, but I also didn't want to, like, miss a morning. Like, if I got in there and there was, like, nothing there, I probably would have just kept moving until I found something good, and I may not have even hunted that morning, you know what I mean?
Set the stand up for the next evening or something.
Yeah, something. But it looked really good in the dark, so I, like, crossed the beaver dam, which was, in hindsight, a pretty bad idea. And then I walked around where the deer would drop into the beaver dam for like 15 minutes trying to pick a tree out as it's getting light. And I'm like trying to figure out if I got lanes. And that's a hard thing about public land that you don't think about is like you can't trim anything. So like you got to kind of have natural lanes. And and like I said, along this river bottom, it's pretty thick. So I finally pick a tree out. I get all set up, get in it, and the wind's actually blowing good. It's kind of getting sucked down the creek bottom, like away from the beaver dam, so I'm pretty happy with that. And I settle in, and I didn't see anything till, I was playing with my camera, because remember, I'm hunting out of a saddle now.
Right.
So this was my
That's
first
a whole
saddle.
nother discussion, too.
Yeah, the whole saddle hunting thing. I hate to admit I have not practiced with it very much at all. Shot out of it a few times, felt pretty comfortable, but the whole climbing, being 25 foot up in a tree, whatever, like it was all kind of new to me, and I was just taking my time to make sure, I didn't do anything stupid. But I'm set up, and it's about 9:30 or something like that, and I was talking to the camera, talking about how I'm gonna give it another half hour or something, and then get down, and I just catch movement out of the corner of my eye, and I turn my head, and there's a doe at like 15 feet.
Right under the tree.
Right under the tree. It's so thick in there, and it was like so like muggy and wet and everything. Like, I mean, and now hindsight's 20/20. I could have smoked her if I would have known she was coming, but like you couldn't see anything, and she just pops out right here, and I'm like, crap. Well, we lock eyes. The mosquitoes were insane. So I'm sitting here staring at this doe, and the mosquitoes are just like buzzing up my nose. And I'm like, finally hit this point. I'm like, oh my God, it's not worth it. So I just like slowly move my hand up to my face, and she snorts and takes off running. Well, she had a little forkhorn with her who was right behind her.
Oh, yeah.
And the little forkhorn he didn't really know what happened, but he kind of tried to cut downwind. And when he did that, he walked right through this little gap in the trees, and I had a shot at him. It would have been about 30 yards. But I'm like, to be honest, my thought process at that point was, oh man, if it's going to be this easy opening morning,
How tall do you think he was, the forkhorn?
Oh, he wasn't big at all.
He's a
he
fork.
still had velvet though.
Yeah, I mean enough to see his velvet pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Been a sweet buck.
So I was like, oh, I'm gonna hold out, So I just let him walk, and they ended up circling downwind and got my wind and snorted, and both took off up the hill,
Mm-hmm.
So then I got down, and I proceeded to scout. I kind of scouted my way back to the truck, a different route. Found a couple really good crossings. Found a bunch of acorns dropping.
Really?
Which seemed very early.
What kind?
So
of
there
oak
were
tree,
white and red oaks dropping.
Nice.
And then on another scouting trip, I found a ton, and I mean loaded, with Chesapeake oak acorns dropping.
And those are huge down there, aren't they?
What's that?
Those are huge down in that area?
Big. Yeah.
No, like they prefer those early season? Oh, no.
So, yeah, that's what I was reading, and maybe...
Yeah, they're tart or something, aren't they? Or a little sour, more sour than the others?
I guess. I just read that they weren't preferred.
Okay,
and it
sounds right.
definitely made sense to me because the amount of Chesapeake oaks acorns that were on the ground was, like, insane up on these ridges. Like, they were everywhere, and I'm like... This is a gold mine, but there's literally zero.
I think they eat those last. I think I did read that.
It might be.
That'll be the last one they eat.
They weren't hitting them then. There was like no deer sign.
Huh.
Nothing. So
funky.
I found a couple really good spots, some creek crossings. I got back to the truck that day, and then my buddy actually got us a 90-acre lease too. So we went out there. We checked that new lease out. And I hunted that evening, put a camera up, didn't see any deer. I did bump a deer off the top of the ridge. I don't know what it was, walking in there. The next morning, what did I do the next morning? This is going to be hard to recall all this, Bryce.
Yeah. I don't even remember how many days you were there.
I was there 5 days.
5 days?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The next morning, where did I go? The next morning I didn't hunt. That was that scouting trip. So
okay.
I had walked all that stuff. I found a couple good spots, but I didn't find anything that was like, oh man,
screaming at you like that beaver damn trail or something.
Exactly. Well, let me take this back. So I did, on my way out that first morning, I found a real thick, gnarly like bedding area that was really close to this bean field that I was hunting, right? And there was a ton of trails coming in out of this bean field, but down by the edge of this like thick spot, this bedding area, there was acorns, white oak acorns dropping, or red oaks, I don't remember now. And there was a scrape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I saw this scrape and I was like, oh, this is dynamite. I will be back here tonight or the next evening, right? So that was my plan. I marked that on Onyx. I ended up hunting the 90-acre lease that night. Didn't see anything. The next morning, I went scouting. I was like, you know what? I just need to cover a ton of land, right? And that's what I did. Walked. And honestly, I didn't find anything that I liked.
Really?
Yeah, so...
Did you stick to a certain type of contour? Did you stick to on the midway ridge?
Well, so I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it because, you have a lot of topography there. So I wasn't sure if what I was looking for on that scouting trip was like, are these deer bedded in the bottoms or are these deer bedded up on top the ridges? Well, I kind of found like the up on top the ridges are like open. So there's not a lot of bedding opportunities. So I'm pretty sure that all those deer are bedded down in those bottoms, even the bucks, because it's just open, at least on public land. If there are bucks, that's probably where they're bedded because it's thick and they got the cover. I did kick up a few deer that were bedded, some does, but I just didn't find like anything that like. I like I said, I walked a couple different creek bottoms. I didn't find any like really good crossings or anything that I was like. And here's another thing too, is it's summertime. Like deer sign really doesn't show up that much.
Right.
So I got this mentality. I'm looking for like November shit.
Right.
like a beat down deer trail or something like that. But
finding a scrape that early is huge. Let
that
alone,
scrape was
I mean,
big. So that kind of like, I also had that in the back of my mind that like, this is going to be a slam dunk tonight, you know? So
was that just one day after you found the scrape you went back in?
I went in the next day. Yeah.
You think it would have benefited to hit that like last after your?
I think it would have been smarter for me to hit it that night.
Because your scent was already in there. You're already in there.
I think I should just set up and stayed there. That night, so after I did all that scouting, didn't really find anything that... I found a lot of stuff, I will say, that I think I'm really excited for if I end up going back, like mid-October or during the rut. But nothing at that moment, like, really got me fired up.
So what did you find that pumps you up for October? Like good funnels, good...
Funnels, pinch points, old rubs.
Okay.
A bunch of... There's a ton of white oaks up there that weren't dropping yet, that were loaded with acorns.
Now, are you marking all this?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
That's my goal to be better at this year.
Yeah, mark. So that evening, and don't forget, it is 90-plus degrees every evening.
That's so brutal.
It is so hot and brutal.
So brutal.
The mornings were like in the low 80s, high 70s, so it was bearable. But, man, you'd get to the parking lot at 2 o'clock, and you're just like, what is this? I'm going deer hunting right now. It's
I'd rather sit
hot,
in the truck
man.
and just sleep.
Yeah, well, and that's what I kind of found out is a lot of people, all the locals down there, they don't really hunt that early, at least in that area, it seemed like.
That's something you told me before, even around here, up back home, is like early season, I don't even mess with hunting in the morning. I just hunt in the evening.
I mean, it depends for the most part.
Right.
If you're just going hunting to kill like a doe or something like that, or you're just going to see what you can see or whatever, I like to hunt the evenings. But if you have a big buck and you know where he's living or whatever, and you think you can get away with it, you got a good wind, you got a little cold front, like, by all means, hunt the morning. It's so situational, you know. You can't really slap a generic thing on everything. But, yeah, so that evening, so this would have been the 3rd, I went in there to hunt that scrape. And I get in there probably about 3:15.
Okay.
So you can shoot till like 8:30 or something like that.
It's good.
And get all set up. I got in a really good tree I was pretty happy with. Got this really good deer trail coming out right underneath me. A scrape about, 22 yards or something like that from me. I can shoot all around. And while I'm sitting in the tree, I'm kind of looking around and glassing. I look down and there is a trail camera on that scrape. Yeah.
Walked right past it the other day.
I didn't see it. Unless somebody was in there, like, well, actually, no, I know it was there because when I was looking at my footage while I was talking to the camera when I found the scrape,
you could see it.
You can see it in the background.
Oh, no way.
But I didn't see it when I was standing there.
Right.
So it almost makes me think somebody made it, like it's a fake scrape, like a mock scrape.
It very well could be.
So I think I was in there hunting a mock scrape, honestly. But anyways.
No signs of corn or something? Like maybe they were baiting and they just tore it up that easy? Or?
No, I don't think you're allowed to bait on private or public land in Kentucky.
Right, but you know how people can get.
Oh, I know. But
won't stop them.
I didn't tear down because I was like, you know what? I'm already set up. I'm up here. Whether that's a real scrape or a fake scrape, a deer might hit it. Like maybe this guy, it was a cell camera, so maybe he hasn't been in here for a month.
Right.
And maybe a deer will just walk right out of this bedding area to me, who knows. Sorry if that's your camera, buddy, but I ruined your spot.
Yeah.
But I ended up hunting all night, and I had a doe and a fawn come out maybe 60 yards down from me. And they kind of worked their way up to the bean field. I would have never had a shot at them or anything. So I did see deer, and that was cool. Gets dark. I climb down, packing all my stuff up. I stand up, put my backpack on, and I look up to my right, and there's a red light. And I'm like, oh, what's this?
Somebody else was hunting?
Yeah. Like
that guy.
60 yards from me.
Never seen him.
So I end up running into him at the truck. I thought he was waiting for me to walk up to him, but I don't know, he was kind of, looked like he seemed like he was running from me after that. But like, I catch up to him like on my way to the truck or whatever. And I was talking to him, super nice guy from like West Virginia or something up there hunting and just kind of doing the same thing I'm doing, trying to kill an early season velvet buck.
Wasn't his camera then?
I don't think so. He didn't say anything about it. I didn't bring it up to him, I don't think. But he said that he was in there at like 2 o'clock. So he was there before me.
Watched you climb and everything?
Never even knew I came in there.
That is crazy.
I said, we were 60, 80 yards apart. You never heard me? He said, no, you must have been quiet. I was like, I climbed that tree and everything. You never heard me? He's like, nope. I was like, man, I must be doing something good.
Yeah, there you go.
Silent
That's a good confidence booster right there.
Yeah, but he saw those does. We talked for a little while, and he was, like I said, he was a super nice guy. And I kind of explained to him what I was planning on doing the rest of the trip, and he kind of explained to me, and we kind of stayed away from each other. I never saw his truck again or anything, but just wanted to make sure we were on the same page so we didn't, because it seemed like me and him were probably the only people hunting this entire WMA.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, there was another truck, I will say that, in that parking lot that we heard driving away. He said he saw them earlier or something, but I never saw them. He was telling me about them, but
think about it though. All that property for two guys really hunting it. You're that close to each other, and you still probably could have had a chance at that doe.
Well, that's what's funny is that it's like 2,500 acres, right? It's huge, and two people hunting the whole thing, and they both picked the same freaking spot.
That's funny.
And there's a camera there, so potentially 3 people picked the same spot.
Would you have even remotely picked that spot even if that scrape wasn't there, just because the bean's there and whatever other?
No, I think it was a good spot even without the scrape.
Okay.
But that changed my mentality from that point on.
Dun, 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 dun.
Look where all the pressure is. I started thinking about that, right?
Hunt the hunters.
And it's going to be at all those bean fields that butt up to the private. So my thought process, and there was another morning, I don't remember which morning when I was scouting. It may have been the morning before, but where I went in to check another bean field that was like at a different part of the property. And I get all the way back in. It's like a pretty long walk from the parking area to get out to the edge of this private. Right where I had a pin, I'm like, this is a spot I want to go check out. This is going to be good. There's a ladder stand.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was a fresh one. Like somebody recently installed it. There was boot tracks.
Really?
So I think
that was away from the beans?
No, that was right on the beans.
Oh, right on the beans.
Yeah. So like if you're going down there to hunt public land opening weekend in Kentucky, everybody else wants to hunt the beans too.
I'm telling you, one thing I've learned and experienced just from Southern Ohio is there's deer I've killed. You see what they've been eating, and there's no corn in there. There could be corn just cut if you're back in there far enough. Some of them deer are smart enough to avoid the pressure, and they have a good enough environment. They don't need it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were big tracks going out to those beans. There were, like, if you stand at the edge, you could see obvious feeding sign in the beans.
Right.
Like they were mowing
I
them
believe
down.
it. Yeah.
But my thought process was, okay, if there's a big buck in here, he's definitely coming to these beans, but I bet he's not getting there until 10 or 11 o'clock at night because of all the human pressure and all the activity.
Right. They're smart.
So my thought process was I'm going to just start hunting as deep in away from the beans as I can to these like more remoter areas where I think a buck may be bedding to try to, catch him coming back in the morning or catch him leaving or something like that.
Hitting some acorns before or after he hits the beans or something.
Exactly.
At night. Yep.
So what did I do the third morning.
Here's a question, though.
Go ahead.
What are you doing? So, after the evening hunt at the scrape where you seen the other hunter, what are you doing when you go home? You want to go towards something more remote now, so what are you looking at map-wise, onyx-wise? Are you going back to topography as far off, deep, away from them beans? Or, because at first you said you were looking for bottoms, right?
Yes.
So, are you sticking with trying to look for bottoms just farther away, deeper
Yes.
into the woods? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my plan. So, going back to opening morning now, when I did all that scouting on my way out, and when I found that scrape,
Right.
I started looking at all the pins that I had that were like further back, closer to where I was actually hunting that first morning, near that beaver dam. And that beaver dam keeps sticking with me, and I almost wish I would have hunted it again, because that was like the best crossing you'd ever find. Like down below that beaver dam, the swamp and creek system got so wide, it was almost like a lake.
Oh, wow.
So, and then above that was very steep and all this stuff. So, like, 6 foot drop offs to the creek. So, like, that beaver dam was like literally awesome for like a pinch point or a funnel. And if I go
Honey
back
hole.
during the rut, like, that'll be the first place I go.
Right.
Because it's pretty far back there. It's 1.5 miles from where you're parking. But that was my thought, was like, well, I know there were some red oaks and there was some white oaks dropping down in those bottoms where I had scouted. There's all these different, these big ridge systems and all these different like erosion channels or like ephemeral creeks that are coming down from the top of these ridges that go down into that big creek system. Well, there were a ton of like crossings on these like little ditches, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I found a couple of those when I was doing my scouting that were like pretty beat down, and there were some white oaks nearby that were actually dropping. So that was my plan for morning 3. I'm like, I'm going to get way off that bean field. I saw deer back there the day before. I know there's acorns dropping. So if I'm a big buck, I'm leaving that bean field, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to mosey on back to my bedding area, munching up acorns before I cross the creek and get into that thick shit to bed. So that was my thought. So that morning, and that's another thing, man. We can talk about wind and thermals for ages. I struggled with that a lot, but I get back in there again. I go all the way back. I cross that beaver dam again, and I start working my way kind of back towards the bean field. And it's pretty dark still, but it's kind of getting light. So I'm kind of panicking. I'm like, man, I need to get set up. I need to pick a tree. I get to that one crossing, this new crossing that I wanted to hunt. I get in a tree, and as I'm like pulling my bow up, I hear a deer snort up on the hill. Just like over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, why couldn't I?
So it was above you in the morning, catching your thermal rising.
Exactly. Well, at that point, it was still dropping because it was still cold. The sun hadn't come up yet.
Oh, okay.
But the wind was doing some goofy stuff.
Fucking doing the tornadoes and
and I wouldn't be surprised if he heard me or could see me or something in the dark. Yeah, if it was a buck. But anyways, I got set up, and I'm like, well, maybe there's more deer coming through. Not every deer in the woods heard that, so. But it seemed like it did because I didn't see anything on that sit.
And they're loud, huh?
Yep. So then I ended up getting down pretty early that morning because I was a little frustrated. So I started walking around. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go up this ridge because I was looking at the map while I was in the tree stand. I'm like, it looks kind of thick up here. I'm just going to go up this ridge where I heard that deer snort and just see what's going on up there. So I'm working my way up there, and all of a sudden I like come across this little hillside that's like, looks like hogs went through it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Big white oak tree, dropping like crazy. Deer in there just hammering these acorns under this tree. And so I'm like, oh, this is the spot, dude. Like, if they're bedding up top or they're bedding down below, they're hitting this acorn tree before they're working their way out to these bean fields at night. Guaranteed. So I ended up marking that spot. That was at like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm thinking, like, I'm not going to stay here all day. I'm just going to pack out, and then I'll come packing back in about 2:30. So that's what happens. Come back in at 2:30, and here's a really good lesson. If you're scouting and you find a spot that you're like really pumped about, you think is good, pick some trees out before you leave.
Oh.
So, like, I get in there. I got to the parking area at 2 o'clock, and I am so, like, just such an overthinker. It's annoying. I get all the way back to this tree that's dropping, and I'm, like, standing there, and I'm like, I don't know where to sit. What tree do I do? Because there's, like, now that I get back in there, there's, like, 3 or 4 white oaks that are dropping. And it's a pretty big area, so you can't cover it all with a bow. So I'm trying to think of, like, okay, if I was a buck, where am I coming in at? There's a trail right here below me. There's a trail coming up off the top above me. There's a trail right here in the middle. That crossing's down there. So my first thought was, like, maybe I should sit at the crossing and catch them after they've eaten the acorns and they walk past me. And then I was like, well, I kind of want to be on the acorns. Which, hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have, because, you know, I was hunting public land. I wanted to be kind of aggressive.
Yeah.
Right? If I blow it out, who cares? Whatever. So I ended up picking, you know, a lot of the stuff I read is bucks hunt up on the ridge, or will bed up on top of ridges, right? And this is like the one ridge that, like, I've seen. I'm like, the buck could be bedded up there. It's pretty thick up there. I never walked up there. But I kind of played the game like, I'm going to go for broke. I'm going to set up to kill on this trail. And these 2 trails below me, if a deer comes in below me, I'm screwed.
You have to make that decision when you have that many trails going to a food source, so you know what I mean?
Yeah, because the wind, you know, in the evening, the thermals are dropping.
Yeah.
Well, so I set up, and I got this trail, and I'm, like, staring up the hill, like, hopefully a big buck comes walking down, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it starts getting later, and I can feel those thermals dropping. And I'm looking off to my left, and I see a deer moving through the woods, and I'm like, oh, man, there's a deer down there. Dang it. And I remember
this is to the left below you already?
To the left, like, kind of the same level, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm kind of worried, like,
he goes
if
behind
they're going
me.
to come to this tree, they're going to probably not take this trail that I was planning on. So, and I remember in my interview, which you'll see when I drop the video, but I'm literally like, oh, this spot is dynamite. I'm like, perfect, except if a deer comes down below me, I'm screwed. But whatever. So I'm watching this deer, and I'm trying to see this deer because it's super thick down there, and I'm just catching pieces. And about 2-3 minutes go by, and here comes this fawn walking right up the hill on the trail below me. I'm like, oh no, here she comes. So here comes a fawn, here comes another fawn. Well, they walk right underneath me pretty much, 20 yards, and never caught me, nothing. I'm like, oh, golden, you know. I don't know what's going on with my wind, but they didn't catch me. Well, 30 seconds later, here comes the mama doe behind them, and it's like the hill comes down, and then there's just like this big low spot. I just imagine my scent like was dropping down there all night and just creating this pool of just stinky, sweaty Josh down there.
Mosquito blood.
Yeah. And, oh my God, you want to talk about public land deer being skittish? She hit that spot, snorted like the loudest I have ever heard, and I've never seen a deer run like down a hill like that. Like just boom, crash, 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 like gone. I mean, she was
gosh.
just in 15 leaps. She had gone like a quarter mile and was like almost to the bean fields. Probably like it was crazy how fast she got out of there. Made the biggest racket ever, and the two fawns were like, "What's going on, Mom? What's going on?" And she's like, "You didn't smell that, you idiots! Like, let's get out of here." So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and like I'll be honest, Bryce, it was miserable. Just like the
I
heat
believe it.
and the bugs.
The
like,
heat alone.
I was sitting there and I'm just like, dude, this sucks. Like that deer I just spent, 2 hours getting back here, hanging this stand, getting set up. I was in the tree for an hour and a half and this doe comes walking up and blows the whole freaking thing, blows my cover, So I'm like just getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. I bought this dead downwind like mosquito spray. Doesn't work. Don't buy it.
I believe it.
Literally doesn't work at all. Those mosquitoes were like, makes us stronger. Give me more. Like, I don't know, dude. It was terrible. The thermocell I had wouldn't work. I couldn't get it to work. So at that point, there wasn't a lot like keeping me going. You know what I mean?
I believe it.
So I ended up climbing
Discouragement
out of
for
the
sure.
stand like probably an hour before dark, just because I was like, ugh, like I need to get out of here. I need to rethink some stuff. I need to figure out.
Kentucky, you can take this one.
Yes. Well, I still had 2 days left, right?
Here's my question real quick.
Go ahead.
So when you picked that spot underneath the oaks that were dropping, all torn up,
Yeah.
were you still closer to where you had already had your scent in, like by that dam and the crossing?
I was probably 300 yards from there.
Okay. So that was what I was going to ask, was like, when you're trying to pick that spot up there, you got all these trails. Did it ever cross your mind to, like we said earlier, hunt the hunters? What about hunting yourself? So you already had your scent in. They caught you once down by the crossing. You walked over that crossing again, right, to find these oaks?
Yep.
Did that help your decision on, say, all right, I want to be below them on this trail, even though it's 300 yards away?
I'll be the first to tell you, I think a lot of laziness crept in at this point.
I believe it. 90
my
degrees, you're getting torn up.
It was hot, like I'm saying, and it's like you're getting beat up. You had an opportunity to kill a deer, you blew it.
Mm-hmm.
You got busted by another deer, and it's like I think I started making decisions based on like I still wanted to put in the work, if that makes sense, but like this is a spot I know how to get here. It was easy to get to. It's just a straight walk. I didn't have to. You don't have to walk up any hills to get to that place. I'm embarrassed to probably admit that. It's all in the bottoms, so that may have had a lot to do with it. But, yeah, like I said, hindsight. It's hard because when you show up to a spot and you have no idea where to hunt or what to do, like you have to scout it.
Yeah.
You have to lay your scent down and mess some stuff up. You have to figure out where the deer are.
For sure.
But for some reason, I don't know why, I would find a good spot, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to come back to this. And I wouldn't hunt it till later. Like, that acorn tree, I decided to hunt that night, right? And I had deer come in, but I was just in a bad spot. I should have set up different.
Right.
Yeah, I wish I would have, because I wanted to hunt the mornings really bad, just because they were cool and it was more comfortable to hunt, honestly. But I wanted to have like a place I knew where I was going. I can't stand walking in and hanging a stand in the dark in a place you've never been. Like, who knows what it's gonna look like when it gets light out? It's just it's a rough experience. If like very rarely it goes smoothly. So I would go scout these areas and I'd mark a tree and I'd be like, I'm going to come here in the morning, you know what I mean? And I always felt like it was like kind of ruined because I was just in there.
Right.
So it's weird. I wish I would have did more. Like, if I were to do it again, I probably would try to focus more on scouting in the mornings, like walking with a stand on my back, and just when I find a place, like just hang and hunt and that's just where you're at for the day.
Which could be at any time if you're doing that kind of style too, right? It could be you found them acorns at 1 o'clock. I'm staying in here,
and this is where I'm camping out for the day. Yeah.
Yep.
The other problem was carrying enough water with you.
Oh, I believe
carrying
it.
enough food with you. That was part of my decision because I came very unprepared, honestly, because that was part of my decision for when I found those acorns was packing out and coming back in was, I only got 1 bottle of water and I didn't bring any food. Like, I ain't staying here all freaking day. Like, screw that, you know? So, it was a lot of those, like, trying to be comfortable, those comforts and stuff that was, like, messing with my decisions, too. But I would have probably saved the mornings for scouting. It's cool. Like, let's go put on some miles and walk before it's 90 degrees and just find some places, find some good spots, and then, you know, you say you walk 3 miles and the best spot you found was, 2 ridges over. It's 2 o'clock. Like, all right, that's where I'm going to hunt tonight. Head back that way, set up and hunt.
Right.
And do it slow. Take your time. Like, hunt, like, while you're scouting. I didn't do any of that. When I went scouting, I left my bow, I left my stand. I just went and walked, and marked a bunch of stuff. And a lot of that was I had in mind future trips too.
Right.
I didn't go down there thinking I was going to
make or break,
shoot 150-inch velvet buck the first trip. This is the long game.
For sure.
So a lot of it was like, I'm gonna go check this place out because I may come back in October, or something like that, or I may come back next year. So,
I think an experience like that is almost unmatchable. Kind of what we talked about at the beginning of this full circle is being a woodsman, and the little things like heat and mosquitoes and spiders just break you down mentally to where if you're going to be a real woodsman and you're going to go out there with nothing, you're digging deep. You're really digging deep to just even see deer.
Yep.
And I've noticed that in my short time of it is like it's so easy to get discouraged, and then the woods start feeling overwhelming because they're freaking huge, and you're like, I don't know how to do this, that, blah, blah. And like,
yeah, man.
You panic a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the more experiences like that and the more comfortable you'll get.
Yep.
I'm confident already going into this year. Like, I think I'll be more comfortable.
I think I learned more on this hunting trip and became a better hunter than I have in 2-3 years hunting the way I hunt on all these private lands that I've hunted for 20 years.
I
think I learned more about, like, what not to do and what to do in the future and than I've learned in a long time. So I definitely, like, I wish you could have went with me, man. Like I said, I'm going back in October most likely. So
that might be happening.
Come. But I think it's if you want to be a better hunter, if you want to, like, expanding your horizons and your experiences and going to new places and trying to figure those places out without any, because what happens a lot of times on these properties that I've hunted for 20 years is I'm making decisions based on, like, deer I killed 10 years ago.
Right.
I have so many biases and so many things that are hanging around in the back of my mind, like, forcing me to make these decisions that's not based on, like, the sign right there in front of you.
The situation you're in.
Exactly. It's easy to do that. It's easy to get caught up in that. Well, like, oh, there's some rubs here. Oh, look at the scrape here. That looks really good. But, man, I've killed 3 deer out of this pinch point in the last 2 years. I should just go here. And then you don't see anything. Like, or that might be a bad example, but, like...
No, that's good because deer move. I mean, deer move,
stuff changes, and going to a place where you have no prior biases and you just... It's like a clean slate. You have nothing to sway your decision whatsoever except this is the sign. You know what I mean? And that was a big problem for me because summertime too, right? I'm not used to scouting for deer in the summer when the grass and plants are still growing, like sign trails, like there's no rubs, there's really no scrapes, like that stuff just doesn't show up the same, right? So, I mean, that was a little difficult, but I think I've gotten better at it from that trip. I think I learned a lot.
them situations can be so simple but so complicated. Like, you can simplify it all the way to the best looking trail or the best food thing, but it can get so complicated.
Oh yeah,
just like that. And yeah, that's why I was trying to go no camera. Try and keep it as simple. Read the sign.
Well, that's
simple. Keep that in my head the whole time this year. Just read the sign.
That's the goal, right? Is to hunt. Whenever you hunt, you want to feel like you're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the worst thing is getting set up, hanging a stand, getting all set up, and just, like, not being confident in where you're at. Like it's almost not fun, right? So, like,
right.
That's my goal this year, too, is to try to make every sit feel like, oh, this is the
hope.
Spot.
Nothing's more powerful than hope, right?
Yeah.
You got some
and
hope
what that makes you pay attention. That keeps your morale up the whole time you're hunting, because there were a lot of these hunts, like, when I blew it on that doe and that little buck, like, I probably wasn't paying attention because I didn't feel like I was in a kill spot, and if I don't know if that's a good example, but you know what I mean. It's just
no, yeah.
It's
that's how you can get burnt out really quick. If you're bow hunting all the way into gun and muzzleloader, like if you don't have some of that eager confidence into your spots, you'll get burnt out quick.
But it's definitely a super good way to become a better hunter is to do a trip like that. But
I agree.
Just to kind of wrap up the trip, though, I ended up hunting 2 or 3 more times. I hunted public land. So I hunted public land. I had after I bumped those does, or those does caught me, I was like, all right, I'm getting out of this area. I've been in here too many times. I've walked it too many times. I'm going to a completely fresh spot, stand on my back. That's what I'm doing. So that evening, or the next evening, I ended up working my way a completely different part of the WMA, different parking lot, and ended up getting all the way into this real thick stuff and found like an old pond, an old wetland pond.
Still taking like a creek bottom up in there? Or?
Yeah. This was a creek bottom. I was looking for crossings the whole way up. Well, this creek bottom took me all the way up to this pond.
Okay.
And there was a ton of tracks around this pond. So I'm thinking like, ooh, it's 90 degrees. Watering hole.
Right.
This is
just like the beaver dam. A lot of sign there.
Mm-hmm. I hunted that evening, and I left my stand in there and hunted that morning too. Saw 0 deer. So,
frustrating.
Yeah, I'll try to make the Kentucky trip episodes exciting, but it's going to be difficult.
It'd be boring.
Yeah, it was fun though. Like I said, I had a pretty good time. I'm excited for our release down there. I think that'll be. I got a camera down there on that. So
any action yet?
I did have one pretty decent buck on camera.
Nice.
Like 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, he's a 130 some inch. Had velvet on his rack still. So that would be a buck I would definitely target in Kentucky. Yeah. So that was pretty much my trip, and
that's awesome.
And I also had to work while I was down there, so I wasn't like
all in.
It wasn't like a vacation. So like in the middle of the days, I would work from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Then I'd go hunt, and then I'd work in the evening when I got home and stuff too.
Now, here's my big question: if you would redo it first time down there, or let's say you go back in October, you obviously have some scouting done now, but if you were to redo that where you're scouting a lot, are you gonna approach it different than from the creek bottoms? Like, are you gonna try and run them midway ridges or the tops looking for them oaks dropping? I guess you did say they were dropping the bottom, didn't you? So they're dropping everywhere. Are you
there
looking
were oak
different?
Trees everywhere. The ones that were dropping, the white oaks and the red oaks, were in the bottoms.
Really?
All the white oaks and red oaks up on top the ridges weren't dropping yet.
So if you went back, you'd probably go for the...
I'd still say that because that's where the cover is.
Is in the bottoms?
Yeah, like I said, like the woods there, it's all old growth. It probably has never been logged or 50 years ago.
That's cool. That's fun to hunt.
It was just so wide open.
Right.
As soon as you got up out of them river bottoms, it was just, you could see 200 yards.
Wow.
So I just didn't see killing a buck anywhere up on them ridges like that.
I believe it.
There were some ridges like further back from turkey hunting that I knew that had been clear cut or something that were thicker. You know, that's another thing a lot of people don't think about is getting a deer out of there. Played a big part of my decision making. You know, a mile drag is doable. A 3-mile drag, when you know you got to go up a ridge and down a ridge and up a ridge.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, like, the furthest I got from the truck was probably 1.5 miles. But like I said, it was in the bottoms, these creek bottoms, and there weren't any hills, really. Like, I was staying in spots where I knew if I killed a deer, I was going to be able to wheel a cart back there and drag a deer out if I needed to, and I didn't have to go up some ridge or something like that, because those are steep, dude.
Very.
And if I killed a 250-pound buck back there, like...
Good luck.
Yeah, so, you know, quartering a deer out, I've never done that before, but that's probably going to be an option for me going forward, because I think what's going to happen is if I go back in October or November, there's going to be a lot more people there.
For sure.
So I don't think that mile's going to cut it.
Right.
Especially if there's not a giant hill or something in between you and your truck, because I have a feeling that everybody and their brother would do the same exact thing I did. No problem. But because there was nobody down there and it was 90 degrees, I think I kind of got away with it. And I had some, you know, encounters with deer. But you put it November, you put, you know, 4 or 10 public hunters down there on November 3rd, I guarantee you somebody's down in there.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a little further back, getting into spots where you do have to walk up a real big ridge and drop down in another bottom where you're kind of encompassed by terrain, by some elevation. I think that'll be the ticket to find deer on public land. But then, like I said, quartering them out or figuring a way to get a deer out of there.
What about one of them, like, harnesses? You seen them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing, too.
It's still 200
you ever
pounds.
drag a deer 3 miles?
Nope.
It's not a thing.
Right.
Like, just...
Shoot.
Yeah, but it, like I said, it was fun. It's
cool.
It was type 2 fun, if that makes sense. Like, it was weird to be like, I'm deer hunting right now.
Yeah, 90
it's
degrees.
September 2nd. Like, what the heck? This is so weird, but...
That's cool you got on deer, though. That's what matters, right? You knew enough going into it. You still got yourself onto deer.
Yeah, I saw deer. I could have killed a little forkhorn, and I blew it, but...
Live and learn,
Live
right?
and learn. It is not that easy, guys, so if you get a chance...
So they call it hunting, not killing.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. Like I said, I may have a chance to go back in October, so that may be a little different. I think a lot of the stuff that I found in turkey season will come into play a lot more.
Okay.
You know, benches, rub lines, and stuff like that I found. Like, I think that might, and when you got acorns dropping up on those ridges,
The ones that haven't dropped it, that's huge.
like, that may be different. Yeah, so I think that's another thing. Like, you could go down there 3 times, 4 times a year, and every time it's going to be completely different and new.
Right.
You know, so, like, even though I've scouted and I did all this scouting, it's like the beans aren't going to be there. So, like, the whole premise or the whole, like, backbone of my scouting and the ideas I had about what these deer are doing is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like starting from scratch.
It is, really.
But, yeah, I'll definitely do it again, though.
That's awesome. That's what matters, right?
Yeah.
You stay in it. Hunting keeps you around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anything else you want to talk about? We've been trucking.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about you get your bow fixed?
I got my bow fixed. Haven't shot it.
Oh, you got
For fixing, guys, nothing was really broke. I tried leveling my scope. I have a spot hog myself, which was very difficult. I live in an old farmhouse, so square
your
door
jambs
jams
are not straight.
square. So I ended up just making it worse. So I took it to bow shop we go to, we really like, and the guy did it on his vise in 5 minutes. I didn't even get to the gun section and back looking at used guns, and he was already done. So
let me explain, or you can explain what we're talking about. A lot of guys don't even know this is a thing. Honestly.
I did not until I was kind of questioning, like, why do I feel like I'm having to wrench my hand so much to one side to make my thing level when I'm at full drawn, make my scope level.
A lot of these new archery sights will have a first, second, and a third axis that you can level.
Correct.
Right? So, man, I don't know how to explain this. The first axis is level up and down.
Up and down, yep.
I think. The second axis is... what is that? Is it left to right?
No, it'd be like, it's not up and down, but it's this way. So you have up and down, which is like straight vertical, north-south. The other one would be...
so
I don't know,
first axis is perpendicular, so the sight actual bar is perpendicular to your riser.
Yes.
The second axis is so that the housing of your pins is perpendicular and level with your riser.
Correct.
Your third axis, swings your
scope in and outward.
Scope in and out, which is for leveling when you have your bow at an angle. So if you're shooting out of a tree stand, or you're shooting in, you're hunting elk in Colorado and you're shooting
on the ground
down this real steep slope, if you have any kind of angle you're shooting down or up, that part of your sight, your third axis, is going to affect that. And if it's not level, depending on which way it is, your arrows can hit left or hit right if you're shooting downhill. So a really good way to test that is, to get in your tree stand, try to get 20, 25 feet and shoot at your target 30 yards. And if you're like, well, every one of my shots for some reason is 3 inches to the right, it's like, that's probably your third axis. So that's what Bryce was running into, and he finally got that fixed. So very good. I'm
going to shoot it a shit ton tomorrow. So tomorrow will be the game changer. I know it's right. I trust this bow shop a lot. So I'm going to shoot it out of the stand Friday, and I'm going to see what it's like on the ground.
Yeah, I love them down there. Miller's Gun Supply.
Yeah.
If you're an Ohio boy listening to this.
I'm all game for calling them out. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Awesome, man. I've taken my bow down there for 3 years now.
They really do have good equipment, too, and pretty good prices. I brought a buddy with me. Didn't even have anything to do with the bow. He was looking for a few random Remington chokes. Yeah. Found them all cheaper than he would online.
Well, that's what I like about it. They got all kinds of stuff in there. And they got stuff that, like, you wouldn't think they would have. Like, have you seen all the saddle stuff they got?
No, I didn't look into all that.
All the Amsteel guy stuff.
No way.
They got tons of stuff. Latitude Outdoors. They got all the tethered sticks.
I found the only shop I can find QADs at.
Yeah.
They
got all the what's his name? Chris, the Matthews shooter guy.
Chris Wells?
Chris B.
Chris B.
Yeah, they have all of his...
Tim Wells, sorry.
His stuff, all his releases, his thumb releases, and his back hinge releases.
That's
and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, they got that, I was kind of blown. I was like, man, where'd you guys get this stuff, man? Like, you can only get this online.
Oh, yeah. They did really good with a dozen arrows I got, too, last year.
Yeah.
Fletch them for you. They were really good about them.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I'm happy you got that figured out, and we may not have time
to
shoot tonight, but we need to figure out a time to shoot.
I know. So. Long story short, Josh and I used to shoot a lot when we worked together more. Like, I don't know, preseason we were shooting almost every week when I was getting into bow, but
getting wings, shooting bows.
Working life goes that way.
Yeah. So
it's hard when you live like an hour away.
Got to make time for the stuff you like, man.
Yep.
Life's too short.
For sure.
But, yeah, I mean, I think that was a good talk, Bryce. We can go ahead and end it here.
That was a good one. We might be pushing 2 hours.
Yeah, that's enough for me to edit. So
True.
all right. Well, I think we did good though with the ums and the uhs and that stuff. I don't think there'll be a lot to edit, honestly. So
cool.
But hey, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Me and Bryce and John really appreciate it. If you don't give a shit what Bryce has to say,
you got
you
John
can tune
coming
in
up
to
next.
John. We'll be talking tomorrow. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining. We hope you guys have a really successful, safe deer hunting season. It's right around the corner for us Ohio boys. So getting pumped up, getting excited.
For sure. Shoot the questions away.
Yeah,
We're
let us
here
know if there's anything specific you want us to talk about or whatever. We love to hear from you guys, give comments, all that kind of stuff. So you can definitely reach us at the best way to reach me, honestly, is the Buckeye Bowhunter YouTube. Just go on, watch one of the videos and comment or whatever.
Yep.
I usually respond to 90% of the comments on our YouTube channel. So appreciate it again. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yeah, thanks everybody.